It's 1993, the 74th season of NFL football. While the concept of scoragami is still decades away from emerging, we, the omniscient time-traveling scoragami enthusiasts, have reached a point in history in which things get pretty interesting. All the reasonably achievable scores have already happened. Many bizarre and outrageous scores are off the board as well, ranging from low scoragami such as 10-4 to once-in-a-lifetime shootouts like 72-41. Scorigami is now evolving from a simple curiosity to a real challenge. Perhaps it's even too challenging. Across the entire 1992 season, 235 games were played, and exactly one of those registered as scorigami. In previous eras, whenever scorigami began to stall out, a rule change was required to defibrillate it back to life. The last time this happened, in the 60s, it arrived in the form of the two-point conversion introduced by principal AFL founder and Chiefs owner Lamar Hunt. The two-pointer was the driving engine behind dozens of scorigami, but when the AFL merged into the NFL demanded they ditch the rule. Reluctantly, they left it on the porch like a pair of muddy boots, and scorigami leveled off. But Hunt has not given up on it. Year after year, decade after decade, he's lobbied his fellow owners to reintroduce the two-pointer. It's typically been laughed out of the room, but following the 1993 season, attitudes are shifting. The 90s are the decade of steroids, extreme sports, NBA Jam, and Ultimate Fighting, and yet, in the NFL, scoring has cratered. For 3 straight seasons, scoring has hovered around 38 total points a game, a very disappointing departure from the explosiveness of the 80s. So finally, prior to the 1994 season, Lamar Hunt's two-point conversion is implemented by the NFL. Teams fool around with it a little bit during the scorigami-ineligible preseason, but some with short memories predict that once the games actually matter, it'll be shoved into the junk drawer with all the other obscure curiosities of the rulebook and largely forgotten. Wrong. The 8-pointer, in other words, the touchdown plus successful two-point conversion, will account for more than 3% of all scoring events throughout the 94 season, and while its use will regress somewhat in the years to follow, it will become a mainstay of the modern NFL. More importantly, it immediately gives Alex an opening to reference Seinfeld.
Truer words never spoken, John. On the Thursday night of September 29th, 1994, NBC airs the iconic Big Salad episode of Seinfeld, wherein George Costanza expresses his fascination with the spelling of the surname of a Falcons backup quarterback.
No, what's interesting? The quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons is Bobby Hebert. No R, which I find fascinating. Hebert, Hebert. Hebert. It's a fun name to pronounce.
I have never not giggled at his delivery of the B. Anyway, just 3 days later in Anaheim, after not having taken a meaningful snap through Atlanta's first 4 games of the season, Hebert, damn right that's fun to say, enters the game in the final seconds of the third quarter to replace starter Jeff George after he absorbs a helmet-to-helmet hit. Hebert inherits a bizarro 5-0 deficit as the frame winds to a close, which is nearly third quarter-igami. No score has stood at 5-zip entering the fourth quarter since the Steamroller held such a lead exactly 67 years earlier, which remained the final score. So 5-0 wouldn't ultimately represent a scorigami. For that to occur, we need a hero to emerge, and right on cue, Hebert dons his cape. Needing to travel 89 yards in the final minutes of regulation, he fires off key completions to Andre Rison, then Ricky Sanders, then Ironhead Hayward, and then Terrence Mathis to get him within striking range. On third down, Hebert threads a pass in between 2 Rams that finds its way to Sanders for the go-ahead touchdown. With just a few minutes left on the clock, the Falcons want to go up a clean 3, and so they attempt their first two-pointer in franchise history. Hebert connects with Mathis over the middle, the defense hangs on, and the score is cemented as the lone 8-5 game through the league's first 105 years and counting. Summoned to reality by the power of Costanza.
In this chapter, we will examine the modern era of scorigami. The stat about nothing. It's clear that the two-point conversion is fated to be a lot more than an irrelevant answer to a trivia question. That honor goes to another scoring type that very quietly sneaks into the record books in 1994, the forfeit rule. It states that if a team forfeits a game, the other team is automatically awarded a 2-0 victory. This is a rule that, entering the 2025 season, has still never once been used, and even if it were, it would be useless for our purposes since a 2-0 game already happened all the way back in 1923. As useless and boring as it is, this rule was tantalizingly close to becoming an object of great fascination. Because although the NFL never had a forfeit rule until now, college football did. For a very long time, if a college team forfeited, its opponent was granted a 1-0 win. If this were the NFL rule, it would single-handedly open up 1-zip for business and make it one of the very most alluring pieces of scoragami on the entire board. A score that could only ever be triggered by a forfeit. How cool is that? So why did the NFL opt for a 2-0 forfeit score? Since the rule is so obscure and has never once been used, it would appear that no explanation has ever been offered or even asked for. It's impossible to say. Sadly for us, 1-0 remains legally impossible, so let's now return to the world of the possible. It's Thanksgiving in 1998, Vikings 46, Cowboys 36. Longtime viewers may remember that we spent several minutes relishing this game in our series, The History of the Minnesota Vikings. It's known as the game in which rookie Randy Moss punished the team who was too scared to draft him by scoring 3 long touchdowns on just 3 catches. We mentioned that this was scoragami. What we did not tell you was that this is one of the most interesting and instructive scoragami ever seen. I wasn't originally planning on showing you figure 11 until much later, but let's go ahead and open this present early because there's something I want to show you. This illustrates the combined odds of every scoragami that has ever happened. By combined odds, I mean that I simply multiplied the odds of Team A finishing with their score with the odds of Team B finishing with their score. This is really crude math. Statisticians are throwing tomatoes at their screens right now, and they're right to do it. I'll explain by way of example. Let's take another look at that 8-5 game Alex just told you about. The historical odds of finishing with 8 points are about 1 in 700. The odds of finishing with 5 points are about 1 in 1700. Multiply those two figures and you have 1 in about 1.2 million, implying that this is a score that you see once every 4,000 years or so. Do I really think that an 8-5 game is that unlikely? Absolutely not, nowhere close. This is not meant to be predictive. It's instead an opportunity to look at the odds through the funny mirror that is historical precedent and appreciate the weirdest scores for what they are. There are lots of other mathematically irresponsible goodies in here, but for now let's keep our focus to this 46-36 Vikings win. Like 8-5, it belongs to this ultra-exclusive collection of 25 scoragami that register here with odds of lower than 300,000 to 1. The odds are as long as they are because this score pairs a pretty rare number, 36, with an extremely rare number, 46. How did it get there? How does a score this rare happen? Let's walk over to figure 8. Here we see how often teams have decided to go for 2, depending on the number of points by which they're leading or trailing. Most often teams go for 2 if they're trailing by 10, trailing by 2, or leading by 1, and for good reasons. Cutting the deficit from 10 to 8 would make it a 1-score game. Going for 2 while behind 2 would tie it up. Going for 2 while already up 1 would ensure you at least stay tied if your opponent kicks a field goal. As you'd guess, teams generally go for 2 more often when they're behind, although they do go for 2 about half the time when they're leading by 5 to extend the lead to 7, and about a third of the time when they're up by 12 to extend the lead to 14. This is where it gets wacky. Leading 30-19 in the third quarter, Vikings coach Dennis Green opted to go for 2 and was successful. Going for 2, up 11, is a decision coaches only make 5% of the time when presented the option, which makes sense because there's not really a case for doing so. If you just take the extra point and go up 12, that requires your opponent to score 2 touchdowns to take the lead away from you. What more would a 13-point lead get you? Pretty much nothing, barring scenarios that are way too specific to bother accounting for, and your odds of making it go from a near certainty to about a coin flip. It just generally doesn't make any sense to do it, but Green did do it, and this, right here, is what it's going to take to achieve a lot of these astronomically unlikely scoragami. A coach making a bizarre 2-point decision at a very strange point in the game. Sometimes they're playing 95-dimensional chess, sometimes they only think they're playing 95-dimensional chess and are actually sitting in front of a tic-tac-toe board. Green, at various points in his career, was capable of being both, but for what it's worth, a couple months after this game, he'll bring the Vikings to the doorstep of the Super Bowl. The game will be tied with half a minute left in regulation. The Vikings will have the ball in 2 timeouts. Green will have his offense, the greatest offense in NFL history to this point, take a knee, run out the clock, settle for overtime, and lose. After the game, he will inadvertently reveal that he forgot he had any timeouts at all. These are the men who build scoragami. In 1995, the NFL expanded further, introducing the Jacksonville Jaguars and Carolina Panthers. The next year, the Browns packed up and moved to Baltimore to become the Ravens, replaced in Cleveland by the new Browns in 1999. Now in 2002, the Houston Texans are founded. They are the 32nd and as of 2025, final NFL team. We're here at last. I finally get to talk about my personal favorite scorigami of all time. Chiefs at Browns in the 2002 season opener. This game is what I will call the however game. After a late touchdown puts the Browns up 36-31, they go for two to try to extend the lead to 7. However, they fail. The Chiefs take the lead back, go for two to try to extend their lead to 3. However, they also fail. The Browns answer back with a long drive, and with 29 seconds left in regulation, kicker Phil Dawson knocks down a field goal to give Cleveland a 39-37 lead. However, Dawson then stands over a Chiefs player on the ground and talks some trash to him, which earns a flag for taunting. However, the penalty is instead issued to holder Chris Gardocki, probably by mistake. In any case, while I'm unable to confirm this, I don't think there's been any other instance of a kicker or punter or holder ever drawing a taunting call in the NFL. This penalty backs up the Browns' ensuing kickoff 15 yards to their own 15-yard line. However, with 29 seconds left, a penitent Dawson bombs a masterpiece of a kick near the sideline. Since the Chiefs only have seconds on the clock and no timeouts, and the clock doesn't start until return man Dante Hall touches the ball, he should just let it bounce out of bounds. However, Hall takes the bait, running sideways to try to make something happen, killing precious seconds for not a lot of field position. On first down from his own 35, quarterback Trent Green goes shopping, finds nothing on sale, makes a run for it, slides near midfield, and keeps the clock running. Play-by-play man Ian Eagle can't believe it.
Only 10 seconds left. A 12-yard scamper, but more costly because of the clock.
However, it's the right call by Green, who likely understands that they wouldn't be able to get back up to the line in time after a non-scoring completion and wants to set himself up for one last Hail Mary. He does so, spiking the ball and stopping the clock with 4 seconds left. Green takes the next snap, evading the two-man rush and stepping up in the pocket. However, spying Browns linebacker Dwayne Rudd takes this as his cue to swoop in and end this thing. He wraps up Green by the legs and swings him to the ground. However, on his way down, Green flings it backwards to the only red jersey he sees, tackle John Tate. Tate will ultimately play 10 seasons in the NFL. He's fallen on a loose fumble once before, but in no other instance will he ever have the chance to actually run with the ball. However, he does here, catching the desperation flip and rumbling upfield. Tate, an offensive lineman weighing well over 300 pounds, never planned on this life experience. A makeshift convoy forms in front of him. It's incredible that he's even getting this far. It's beyond anybody's wildest dreams. However, the line finally breaks and he's forced out at the Browns' 26-yard line. As miraculous as that was, he's still miles away from the goal line. Coaches trot onto the field to shake hands. Tate is left to catch his breath and wonder what might have been. However, remember Dwayne Rudd, the guy who took Green to the ground? As he did so, his view of the play was obscured. He didn't see Green's pitch to Tate. He thought the game was over. He thought he was the hero who made the game-winning sack. In jubilation, he ripped off his helmet and threw it, which is explicitly forbidden by rule. If the game really were over, the refs would have no jurisdiction here, but the game was not over. It earned the Browns a 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. The football newcomer might reason that this is mere harmless bookkeeping since time has expired. However, a game cannot end on a defensive penalty, so the coaches are directed back to their sidelines so the Chiefs can run one last play with zeros on the clock. 70,000 Browns fans in attendance process the ramifications of this in real time. This game was won. It was over. However, Tate's heroic stomp down the field is suddenly a lot more than a meaningless curiosity. The Chiefs not only get the ball here, they tack on 15 more yards thanks to Rudd's penalty. Down by 2 points, Kansas City uses their final, heaven-sent, untimed down to trot out kicker Morton Anderson for a very short, very easy 3 points.
30 yards away, Anderson! He nails it!
Had the score remained 37-36 as it was just minutes ago, this would have been scoragami. However, Cleveland's late field goal made it 39-37. However, this also would have been a scoragami. However, the Chiefs' game-winning kick on the final play moved the score to 40-39. However, this is also a scoragami.
Let's parachute into the second quarter of a 2002 playoff game where the Niners and Giants are deadlocked at 14 apiece. New York then parlays a muffed punt into a quick Amani Toomer touchdown before they parlay a Jason Sehorn interception into a second Toomer score in the half's final 3 minutes. They cap their first drive of the second half with a Tiki Barber touchdown, and a subsequent field goal makes it 24 unanswered points. San Francisco finds themselves staring down the barrel of a 24-point deficit with just over 17 minutes remaining. Dire circumstances, seemingly impossible to overcome. But the presence of the two-pointer offers a glimmer of hope that it can be erased in 3 possessions instead of 4. All-Pro wideout Terrell Owens gets the ball rolling on the daunting task when he takes a short pass and muscles into the end zone before completing the octopus to potentially make it a 2-score game, even if Michael Strahan gleefully launches some verbal jabs while pointing at a scoreboard that shows his Giants still comfortably in pole position. But 87 seconds later, the Niners take over deep in New York territory, and on the first play of the fourth quarter, Jeff Garcia takes it in on a keeper. For the ensuing two-pointer, he again connects with Owens to make it a 1-possession game in the blink of an eye. On the Giants sideline, tight end Dan Campbell melts down and apoplectically weaponizes his helmet to nearly decapitate himself before drop-kicking it nearly decapitates a teammate. Absolutely nothing to see here. Then a Niner field goal midway through the quarter cuts their deficit to 5, and on the Giants' next drive, they reach a fork in the road. With 3 minutes to play in regulation, New York faces a 4th and 1 on San Francisco's 24. A first down would give him a stranglehold on this one, but instead Coach Jim Fossil summons his field goal unit to try and turn his 5-point, 1-score lead into an 8-point, 1-score lead. Snapping the ball is 41-year-old Trey Junkin, lured out of retirement just for this game during a campaign in which they've had 0 stability at long snapper. They cycled through a half-dozen different guys amid persistent problems all regular season in the most taken-for-granted element of the game, and paid dearly in a 2-point loss to the expansion Texans. Finally, they now have a proven vet to stabilize the position for the playoffs. But just a few days after remarking about such games where long snapping proved fatal, Junkin flubs the snap, rookie kicker Matt Bryant shanks the field goal, and a couple minutes later, Garcia and the Niners surge in front. Up a single point, they of course again go for 2 in pursuit of a field goal advantage. Owens, who's already become the only player to ever score multiple 2-pointers in a playoff game, is targeted for a 3rd. An interception kills the play, but Will Allen attempts a return anyway, with some extracurricular shenanigans stemming from efforts to contain the Fugazi return. Despite relinquishing their massive lead, the Giants still very much have a pulse. In the final minute, they're able to matriculate their way well into field goal range, where on 3rd down they mobilize the kicking unit to boot them to victory. In the wake of his previous mishap and with the weight of the world on his shoulders after being blissfully retired a week earlier, the camera pans in on Junkin eyeing his target before he fires off another errant snap. Holder Matt Allen fails to realize he could quickly throw the ball away or give himself up and call their last time out to get a mulligan, and in the chaos that ensues, his makeshift attempt at a miracle sees him hurl the ball downfield toward offensive lineman Rich Soibert that falls incomplete. A flag is thrown. While Soibert had reported as eligible, the officials call ineligible receiver downfield on a different offensive lineman. What they don't call is the Niners' Chike O'Keefe's interference on Soibert, which would have resulted in offsetting penalties and an untimed down for another shot at a game-winning kick. It thus goes down as the 39-38 Scorigami. Bummer. A collapse of epic proportions. Junkin is inconsolable after the excruciating loss, marking the end of a 20-year career that previously contained just 4 bad snaps out of several thousand before lightning struck on each of his final 2. He profoundly laments his decision to unretire after losing sight of the foremost rule of long snapping.
The 2007 season offers us a couple of chances to reflect on what I am calling the sad 2-point conversion. It's the cousin of the sad field goal, in which a team that's getting hopelessly clobbered settles for a field goal, often because they're getting shut out and they at least want to get a few points on the board. The sad 2-pointer is different in that it demonstrates admirable obstinance rather than just resignation, but it's still sad in its own way when a team losing by 40 points decides to go for 2. That's what the Raiders do with 6 seconds remaining against the Jaguars. Quarterback Jamarcus Russell has just thrown his first of not very many career touchdowns to shrink the deficit on the scoreboard to 49-9. Head coach Lane Kiffin decides to leave him out there just to give him an extra rep. Jamarcus delivers, finding a receiver in the back of the end zone for the Deuce to lock in the final score at 49-11. Earlier, you might have noticed this flawless 100% mark all the way to the left on this chart. That is all thanks to this play. Across the entire modern two-point era, this is the only time a team down by 40 points was offered the chance to go for two, and they took it, and they made it. I understand that 15 years after his career ended, people still have all kinds of jokes for Jamarcus Russell and his disappointing career. I don't care. This man made an eternal scoragami. He made a Week 16 Jags-Raiders blowout mean something. Find somebody else who can do that. More pleasant aesthetics await us in a similar scenario that played out a couple months prior. In Week 7, trailing the Giants 33-15 with only 16 seconds left, the Trent Dilfer 49ers decide to go for two. In its own way, it's considerably sadder than the last one because they're behaving like a team that still has a chance of winning. Converting this would cut the deficit to 16 and make it a two-score game, but to make up those 16 points in 16 seconds, the Niners would have to try an onside kick, recover it, bomb a Hail Mary, race down there as fast as possible to catch a touchdown pass, and pull off a second onside kick recovery. And if you somehow did all of that, there is the slimmest of possibilities that you'd still have like 1 second on the clock to try another Hail Mary. Dilfer tries to find Arnaz Battle near the pylon, but Battle can't secure it. Honestly, good. The score is now stuck at 33-15, which is eternal scoragami, but I actually care more about your well-being at this point, Niners. Making it would have compelled you to continue this fruitless logic by lining up for an onside kick, which almost never works and which carries a much higher risk of injury than your average play. Wait, are you still doing this? You're still trying an onside kick? Dudes, you're down 3 scores. You would have to literally bend space-time in order to score 3 times in 16 seconds. Not only are you risking injury here, you're opening up your secret onside kick bag-o tricks and giving upcoming opponents free tape to look at. Don't do this to yourselves. Go home. The Giants put a merciful end to this exercise and self-loathing by recovering the kick to end the game, allowing us to now appreciate the importance of this 33-15 scoragami. The Niners' futile two-point obstinance now completes the most recognizable formation on the scoragami board, the Tetris cannon. Although none of us will take notice of it until 2016, it fully forms here in 2007. Up here, the unclaimed scores of 31-11, 32-11, 33-11, and 32-12 form a Tetris block of scores that have never been achieved. Below it, right along the difficult-to-reach 32 column, is a mostly rhythmic scattering of more unachieved scores so as to resemble laser beams firing out of the nose of this spaceship. Upon its discovery, it will become something of a fan favorite among scoragami enthusiasts. It's great to see. This board has character now. It has depth. It's been weathered by nearly a century of football. A lot of the near side of the board is defined not by scoragami, but by absences thereof. Filling in these gaps will take time, and we're left to wonder how much time, exactly, and what form those stories will take. We're now midway through the 2012 season. You know how many little green squares are now on this board? I'm not going to make you count. 999. Yep, that's right. The next scoragami is going to be the big 1000, the 1000th unique final score in NFL history. What do the scoragami gods have in store for this once-in-a-lifetime event? Well, let's see. It is November of 2012, huh? Be pretty funny if it was the butt fumble game. It is the butt fumble game. I understand that Alex and I have spent this entire time zeroing in on the funniest, dumbest stories we can find, but revisiting the butt fumble seemed a little bit too predictable. You know, butt fumble is so infamous that you've probably seen it even if you don't watch football. Even when we found out this game was a scoragami, I planned on skipping it. When I realized it was an eternal scoragami, I still wanted to skip it. But then I found out that this was scoragami number 1000. The scoragami gods could not make it any more clear. They demand that we celebrate this. So, here you go. On Thanksgiving night, in front of a national audience, the Jets trail the Patriots 14-0. A miscommunication leads to a broken play, and Jets quarterback Mark Sanchez resolves to run up the middle and salvage whatever gain he can. He thinks he has a small opening on the right side, but guard Brandon Moore is stonewalled by the Pats' Vince Wilfork. The gap never appears. Sanchez runs his face at full speed into his own guy's butt, He fumbles, it's recovered for a Pats touchdown, the floodgates immediately bust all the way open, and we end up with the first and only 49-19 ball game ever. Alright, okay. I need to stop acting like I'm too good for this. I'm not too good for it. That was great. In 2013, we see the greatest single-season scorigami explosion of the 21st century, with 14 of them happening this year. Logically, we are bound to see more eternal scorigami pop up as we get closer to the present day, since the window of time in which a scorigami can be repeated gets smaller and smaller. Still though, 12 of these 14 are officially one-of-a-kind eternal scorigami. And for the first time ever, there are 3 scorigamis in a single postseason. None have ever been repeated. All 3 are defined by fleeting instances of chaos. The Chiefs enter this postseason having lost 7 consecutive playoff games dating back to the 1993 season, one of the longest playoff losing streaks of all time. 3 of the 5 most recent losses have come at the hands of the Colts. Their first-round opponent this year is the Colts. When the Chiefs race out to a shocking 38-10 lead, things feel like they're gonna turn out a lot differently this time around, which they are. Rather than being merely disappointing or heartbreaking, this loss is going to be comprehensively soul-annihilating. In the second half, Indianapolis claws all the way back into this thing to trail by only 10, but nothing quite feels predestined until we see this play early in the fourth. At the Chiefs' 2-yard line, Colts running back Donald Brown coughs up the ball, but the fumble just happens to drop perfectly in front of quarterback Andrew Luck as though he selected it from a vending machine. Chiefs are everywhere, but none of them are quite in the right position to stop him from snaking through them all and reaching across the goal line for the touchdown. Technically speaking, the Colts still trailed after this, but everyone now understood that they were fated to send the Chiefs packing in the playoffs again, and everybody was absolutely right. This game ended in a 45-44 eternal scorigami. The 28-point lead the Chiefs once held in this game is the 3rd largest blown lead in NFL history, playoffs or otherwise. It is the very largest blown lead in NFL history within games that didn't even require overtime to settle. They blew the whole thing, not only in regulation, but with a full 4.5 minutes left in the game. As is so often the case, a safety plays a critical role in the Colts' scorigami loss against the Patriots a week later, but this is a very unique safety in that an element of choice is involved. Near halftime, New England rookie punter Ryan Allen watches in horror as the long snap flies over his head and finally comes to a stop at his own 3-yard line. He runs back toward it, and as he approaches the ball, he has options, albeit very bad ones. He could simply fall on it, which would give the Colts the ball and a very likely touchdown. The better option would be to just kick it through the back of his own end zone to limit the damage to an intentional safety. But Ryan Allen, a rookie fleeing in terror who has milliseconds to make his decision, instead decides that he is going to attempt to play football. I bet at this point some part of him still intends to punt it away, but upon realizing that's a no-go, he tries to evade tacklers, and when he can't do that, he's still obstinate enough to try to lateral to a teammate. Allen is doing everything he can to ensure that this play will result in a touchdown for his opponent, which would kill off virtually any chance of a scorigami, but Jarvis Pendleton is here to the rescue. Highly recruited as a linebacker in high school, Pendleton could have played for a top college program, but gave up on football while still a teenager in order to support his girlfriend and newborn son. He worked any job he could get, and if $5 an hour was all he could make, that's what he made. Years passed, he gained 100 pounds, he started smoking, he fell completely out of football shape until he was 23, at which point he watched a former high school opponent make a big play in Super Bowl 41. He stared longingly at the TV and said, "That's supposed to be me." Then, Jarvis Pendleton decided that it would be him. He joined a JUCO team, then a D2 program, driving a barely operational old Buick to countless practices and workouts that would in turn leave his body about as operational as his Buick. He became a standout at Ashland University, and at age 28, he was drafted by the Jaguars. A little bouncing around has led him to Indianapolis, where last week he played a significant role in their comeback against the Chiefs. And now, scorigami enthusiasts, he's coming through for me and for you. One of the least advisable lateral attempts of all time hangs suspended in the air. Pendleton, whose job has never been to touch the football, tries to pinch and grab it as one might a baseball. And what should have ended up a recovery touchdown that evaporates any chance of scorigami instead smacks off his hand and through the back of the end zone for a transformational safety. This safety compels a later 2-point attempt from the Patriots, more scoring happens, and the game comes to rest at the first and only 43-22 score ever. This postseason, though, the scorigami gods have saved the best for last. Remember how to this point we've seen 2 Scorigamis in a Super Bowl, and both were eternal Scorigami, and both featured the Denver Broncos getting annihilated? Well, on February 2nd, 2014, there is a 3rd Super Bowl Scorigami. It is an eternal Scorigami, and it does feature the Denver Broncos getting annihilated. Seahawks 43, Broncos 8. Other Super Bowls have produced larger margins of victory, but this is the one that feels over the soonest. It only takes 10 seconds to start feeling that way. On the Broncos' first play from scrimmage, as Peyton Manning steps out from behind center to call an audible, center Manny Ramirez snaps the ball to nobody to gift wrap an eventual safety. It's the kind of goof you virtually never see at the pro level, and it's the first of a 9-module masterclass in what it means to be on the butt end of an eternal Scorigami. Module number 2, a system reset in the form of a humdrum 3 and out. Module 3, a 3 and interception. Module 4, a plodding 8-minute expedition down the field that's rendered pointless when it ends in a pick 6. Module 5, a sure sign of distress, a 4th down conversion attempt well within field goal range before halftime. It fails. Module 6, a Seattle kick return touchdown to open the second half. Module 7, a punt in Seahawks territory, down 29-0, the kind of decision that indicates a spiritual annihilation has taken place here. Module 8, the Broncos' biggest play of the day goes for 23 yards and ends with a lost fumble. And Module 9, in the closing seconds of the 3rd quarter, they finally score their first points with a touchdown. Perhaps a little punch-drunk from the evening's proceedings, they attempt a very obviously irrelevant 2-point conversion, and they get it. And this is what I was talking about earlier. This is a weird 2-point decision that avoids the precedented 43-7 and an outcome that avoids the precedented 43-6 to lock in a 43-8 Scorigami that's unlikely to be repeated for a very long time. This game so perfectly represents an especially merciless and chaotic style of Scorigami win that was perfected by the Seahawks, who, throughout the 2010s, mastered the art of producing unique final scores in a way no other team ever has. I wanted to better understand exactly how and why they pulled this off, so I spoke to somebody who's a little bit of an authority on such matters.
It was a weird experience to watch a Super Bowl that did feel pretty, you know, as a fan, you never your butt doesn't unclench until you got at least 3 scores. But they just looked so much better than them so quickly. I remember at the time it would be this uneven, but I've watched and heard a lot of interviews with players on the team, all of whom to a man went into this game thinking they were going to kick their asses. So players are much more aware, I think, of talent discrepancies than we on the outside are.
I know way more about football than NFL players do. I should be out there. And I'm bitter that I'm not. That's why I'm a YouTuber, because I just it's as close to the game as I can get. They won't let me because they know I'd be so good, and that's why they won't let me play.
Same.
Yeah, you too? Yeah, see, that's why we end up in sports media, because we're too good. For reasons that defy explanation, both Mina Kimes and myself have been shut out by the NFL. Maybe that's what's drawn us both to Scorigami, the study of how the seemingly impossible can happen. And we couldn't ask for a more edifying case study than these 2010 Seahawks led by head coach Pete Carroll. This timeline of the Super Bowl era includes every instance of a team winning a Scorigami in at least 3 consecutive seasons. Within the first era of 2-point conversions in the 1960s AFL, teams feasted on Scorigami. Not long after, scoring cooled down globally. Multi-season Scorigami win streaks picked up again when the 2-pointer was reintroduced in 1994, with the Niners piecing together an impressive 6-year streak. By the aughts, though, most of the low-hanging fruit was picked clean. You could still get a Scorigami, sure, but the days of a team actually bottling up Scorigami magic over a span of several years seemed dead and gone. And then, the Pete Carroll Seahawks won a Scorigami in 9 consecutive years. Not only is this far and away the longest such streak, they pulled it off in the recent past, a time in which Scorigami were less available and considerably tougher to get. As opposed to just appearing in a Scorigami, winning a Scorigami generally confers an ownership of that Scorigami. It takes 2 to tango, of course, and losing teams should always be proud of the part they played in making history, but the winners are the ones in the driver's seat, the primary influencers of a Scorigami's character. What is it about Pete Carroll's overall Pete Carrollness that made him drive the Seahawks to so many Scorigami wins? Do you think it was just the way he coaches a team, the way he builds a team, or is it something more mystical about it?
You see the role that Pete Carroll himself played in getting to some of these results. And that role, as best I can kind of sum it up and put in layman's terms is there's often no rhyme or reason to his in-game decision making. When he goes for it, or when he, as a Seahawks coach, would go for it, when he didn't, when he would kick field goals, when he would attempt 2-point conversions, it often, and I say this as both an analyst and a fan who is at times frustrated by it, a lot of times didn't seem to make a lot of sense.
I would love your take on the Seahawks getting to this 36-18 scorigami in 2010 by virtue of Carroll sending Olindo Mare out to attempt 2 field goals from the opponent's 1-yard line on 4th and 1. That was very, very funny to me. I would laugh at a team doing that even once. He did it twice in a game. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Mina, what do you think?
Didn't love it, John. Didn't love it. Carroll being, I think, a defensive coach, and this is a common through line we would see with defensive coaches, was kind of always a little bit risk averse. And some of that was that he was betting on his defense, although I would argue if you're on the 1-yard line, you should then bet on your defense to get us another stop, which is a big part of the reason why you should go for it on the 1-yard line and 4th and 1 generally, but I digress. He just tended to err on the side of conservatism, and yeah, looking back, both very bad decisions that ultimately led to a beautiful result, which was scorigami.
So sometimes the Seahawks produce scorigami on account of Carroll coaching like a magic 8-ball. Other times they got there by pulling you up by your underpants, stuffing you into a trash can, and kicking you down a hill, as they did when they clobbered the Cardinals 58-0.
Do you know how many passes Russell Wilson completed in that game?
Ooh, offhand, I'm going to say not that many. I'm going to guess like 16.
7.
7 completions. That somehow eluded me.
They put in Matt Flynn. This 3-game series where the Seahawks were just dominating teams. I remember there was actually some national backlash too, like, who is this guy, Pete Carroll? What's his problem? He's so overconfident, putting up these 50 burgers on teams. He's not showing good sportsmanship. And it was kind of like, I think, the moment when this team really developed a national identity as being brash and defense-led. This was the game where I feel like the beginning of this 3-game series where that really was established.
That was their 3rd straight year with a scorigami win. The 4th was secured just before the bell with that Super Bowl win at the end of the 2013 season. And the 5th was locked in by a 36-16 win over the Packers.
So this game features one of those strange Pete Carroll decisions that you and I spoke about, and decisions that can go by the way, and sometimes they're conservative, sometimes they're not.
Leading 29-16 with about 2.5 minutes left in regulation, the Seahawks sat at 4th and 1 of the Packers' 15. Any other team in this situation would kick the field goal, in large part because the win is pretty much sewn up either way, and you may as well do the expected thing. Had they attempted the field goal, the final score would have been either 29-16 or 32-16, neither of which would have been scorigami. Pete Carroll instead goes for it. Russ finds fullback Derek Coleman on a dump-off, and Coleman runs it in.
There's not a strong analytical case at all to do what he did in that moment, and I just wanted to clarify that because, again, it reflects this broader trend with Pete Carroll, which is, I guess, I don't know, all right? Like, it's just no consistency or through line with a lot of his decision making. And I say this as someone who thinks he's one of the best coaches in NFL history.
This is a fun one. This is from 2015, November 2015, Seahawks 39, Steelers 30. Both Pete Carroll and Steelers coach Mike Tomlin were active participants, but I would say even though the Seahawks won this one and they were in the driver's seat for the victory, that usually means that they kind of can claim that they built the scorigami, but this time I'm not so sure because Tomlin kind of got the ball rolling with this really weird kick he was on to start going for 2 while he was leading by 2. Within the modern 2-point conversion era, when teams up by 2 points are offered the choice of kicking an extra point or going for 2, they opt to kick the extra point about 99% of the time. Here are the 23 times in which they went for 2. Teams did it 4 times in the 90s when the dark arts of the 2-point conversion were still new to everybody. 9 years passed before it happened again, and only then because of a botched hold. Then, for 6 entire seasons, nobody did it. Then, in 2015, for reasons known only to Mike Tomlin and God, Mike Tomlin's Steelers did it 4 times in the space of 2 months. Then he immediately ceased this curious behavior, and years passed before anybody tried it again. One of those Tomlin decisions to go for 2 up 2 occurs in this game. Like a penny on the railroad track, it derails this game into an unusual cadence with significant scoragami potential. However, there's that word again, Tomlin then immediately jumps it back on the track with a field goal to return the score to a normcore 21-14. But it's as though the scoragami gods said, hey, wait a second, this is a Pete Carroll game, this is our moment. When the Seahawks answer with a touchdown, the extra point is blocked. They score another touchdown, try to compensate with a 2-pointer, and fail. The Seahawks try another 2-pointer and fail. It powers an eventual scorigami that feels like it was destined all along. But as for this particular decision to try to go up 4 instead of settling for a 3-point lead, highly unusual, yeah, but is it necessarily wrong? Wouldn't it be of value to make your opponent score a touchdown to take the lead from you? I hesitated to land firmly on one side or the other, but Mina made a really good point about gamesmanship that we tend to not consider very often.
If you succeed and you get to be up 4 points instead of 2 points, you're incentivizing your opponent to try to beat you with a touchdown. That's sort of a recent thing where I think coaches think a little bit more about the behavior that they're incentivizing when they make 2-point decisions and whatnot, but I digress.
Yeah, you go up 4, it means they can't beat you with a field goal, but it kind of feels to me like if you have 5 windows in your house and you just like deadbolt one of them and you're like, you're never breaking into this house through this window. You can just forget it. You got to use some other window to break into my house. Like, that's kind of what it feels like.
It's also saying like, hey, also you have this information now of knowing that, so you're going to get 4 tries on every down to break the window instead of 3 tries because you know you're going to, it like changes the way that the offense completely approaches every series, knowing that they have all 4 downs to work with.
3 entire decades into the modern 2-point conversion era, we're still not done exploring its many possibilities and implications. As it stands now, 6 of the 9 scorigami that make up Pete Carroll's streak are eternal scorigami. None of them are going to be easy to repeat, but there are a couple in particular that Carroll placed on the very tippy-top shelf next to the cake mold and busted crock pot and all the other kitchen unitaskers you don't even know you still own. Both belong to that exclusive club of the 25 unlikeliest scorigami achieved on the board. One was that Super Bowl win. The other, from 2017, Seahawks 46, Colts 18. Mina, there is something very special and very foreboding about this 46-18 Seahawks win. The odds of a 46-18 game, just purely mathematically, irrespective of any other factors, would be 1 in 364,292. Mathematically speaking, it's probably going to be about 600 years before we see another one. And as an NFL analyst and NFL fan, I don't know, if you had to guess on when the last football game will ever be played in the NFL, what year are you putting it at?
Oh, man. I'll take the under on 600, but that applies to more than football.
In 2018, Pete Carroll extended his team scorigami win streak to a 9th and final season with a 43-16 win over the Niners. Carroll surely didn't know that one of his games in this streak, the 36-16 win over the Packers in 2014, is the very game that inspired me to invent the term scorigami in the first place. It was the visual. It was the pairing of 2 numbers on a score bug that resembled the score of some obscure darts game, not a football game. A couple years later, when I made my first scorigami video, I noticed Carroll's streak, which by that point had stretched to 7. Little did I know that he'd actually keep it going for 2 more seasons. I also wouldn't have guessed that by the last one, he was well aware of what exactly he was doing.
Don't know if you know, but that's another unique score for you guys. That final score
Did we
never
get one?
happened.
Awesome.
9 years in a row.
Really? That's ridiculous. I don't know how that happens. I'm thrilled that happened again for no reason. I got no reason. But it happened. What was the score? Was it 43-16? That's never happened in football before? Wow. I don't know. Just something we've been working on in the offseason.
As we enter the 2025 season, Pete Carroll will be entering year one as Raiders head coach. He's one of a few head coaches who by this point are aware of the concept of scoragami, but he seems like the only one who might, just might, intentionally put one on the board if the game is wrapped up. Maybe his Raiders will score a touchdown in the final minutes to lead 34-12. Somebody will tip him off that 36-12 would be scoragami, and he'll decide, what the hell, let's go for it. We can dream, but either way, he and his Seattle Seahawks of the 2010s achieved more in the field of scoragami than any other team of modern times.
They're a weird team, man. I don't know what to tell you. There's just something. I know we've been trying to I've been trying to be analytical about all of this, and I've pinned a lot of it on Pete Carroll, but I think that this team was just kind of strange.
In November of 2017, the Bills traveled to LA to face the Chargers in their soccer stadium. Buffalo coach Sean McDermott has just benched quarterback Tyrod Taylor, so rookie Nathan Peterman's set to make his first career start. His first drive ends inauspiciously when his fullback does him no favors on what becomes a pick six. 2 passes and 69 seconds later, while under duress from Joey Bosa, he lofts a ball off his back foot that softly flutters into the arms of a Charger. After Shady McCoy ensures they won't have to put the ball in the air on drive number 3, on drive number 4, Bosa crunches Peterman as he's throwing, leading to another can-of-corn interception. On Buffalo's very next snap, Bosa remains a nuisance with a quick inside move leading to immediate pressure and another pick. For those scoring at home, this marks his 4th interception in his last 7 passes. After orchestrating a couple 3-and-outs that feel like wild successes because they get to punt, Peterman's riding high with a 4-pass interceptionless streak. But with intermission approaching, you will never guess who torments him into airmailing his receiver for his 5th INT of the first half of his very first career start. 5 picks and 14 passes, and having completed each of his first 2 attempts, that means across his last 12 he completed 4 to Bills teammates against 5 to Chargers opponents. Suboptimal ratio. Trailing 37-7, McDermott unbenches Taylor for the second half, but the damage has long since been done in this first, and as of 2025 last, 54-24 game. Peterson's interception total from a mere half of play wasn't even matched by a fellow AFC signal caller across any entire game in the ensuing 7+ seasons and counting. He was picked on more than 35% of his passes. Not only is that the most among the more than 28,000 Super Bowl-era player games with at least 14 passes, but no one outside 10-23-77 Dan Pastorini's topped 28.6%, and in recent decades, no one's even come close. Granted, that disingenuously excludes 9-16-73 Archie Manning, who tossed 5 picks and even fewer passes in his own scoragamic loss, but to counter my own counter, Archie at least tossed a TD. And as a man born in 1994, that also means in Peterman's entire lifetime, every other 5-interception game by a QB occurred in conjunction with throwing at least twice as many passes.
You should only ever bet on whether a game is going to be scoragami if you hate money. The one and only exception to this rule ever might be the 2018 Monday night matchup between the Chiefs and Rams. This is one of the most unique NFL games ever played for a few reasons, one being that in the weeks leading up to kickoff, we have fully understood that it's going to be unique. At this point, we don't yet know that at season's end the Chiefs will be the 3rd highest scoring team the NFL has ever seen, or that the Rams will rank number 11, but for once, we scoragami enthusiasts pick up the scent of a unique score before the opening kickoff. Quarterbacks Jared Goff and Patrick Mahomes trade blows all night, both finish with at least 4 passing touchdowns and 400 yards through the air. It's a shootout that looks a lot more like high school ball than anything ever seen in the NFL. Rams 54, Chiefs 51. This score is unique in that it's scoragami, yeah, but it's also unique in that it's the first NFL game ever in which both teams put 50 points on the board. It requires us to add seating capacity to the scoragami board for the first time in many decades by expanding to a 51st row. Most unique though, and most surprising, it was an NFL game that delighted just about everybody who saw it. This game was played almost exactly 50 years after the 1968 Heidi game between the Jets and Raiders. 50 years and 2 days to be precise, and I find that significant. Because, well, that game's viewing experience sent America into fits of rage and made hundreds of fans so mad they called the cops, everyone left their living rooms happy tonight. In part because it was a regular season game that didn't do much to alter the Chiefs' fortunes either way, even fans of the losing team were at liberty to sit back and say, we just witnessed a masterpiece. A lot of fans will tell you it was objectively the greatest regular season game ever played. It's even been ranked among the greatest games, period. It came as close as any NFL game ever has to pleasing every last customer. For one night, the football-watching masses got to feel what it is like to be a Scorigami fan. As we inch closer and closer to 2025, we find ourselves in a golden age of Scorigami, which is not to say that they happen all the time, and in fact, it's good that they don't. These days, we can expect to see between 5 and 10 Scorigamis per season, so about once a month, maybe more. That's enough Scorigami to keep us interested while still remaining special. And of course, when your team achieves a Scorigami, it's not just a Scorigami. Each one is unique. That's kind of the point. It's a discovery of a new little world, always known but never expected. And until the end of time, you're always going to be able to say that you were the first to set foot there. And although achieving Scorigami becomes a little bit more challenging with every passing year, opportunities still abound. Entering 2024, there's plenty of space out in the burbs, but there are also very compelling empty lots sitting both downtown and uptown. 15 entire years after it first emerged, the Tetris cannon still holds completely firm, a striking monument to the sheer unreachability of the 32. There's no telling how much longer it might stand. We haven't had occasion to open up the parts drawer in quite a while now, but there's a fun little piece of business to get to. Let's rewind the clock just a bit to 2013. We're in the middle of a very funny Eagles-Lions game that was so buried in snow that both teams decided to attempt 2-point conversions after every single touchdown. The Lions did attempt one extra point after a 2-point attempt was blown dead by a false start, and their resolve to never kick in the first place was validated when right guard C.J. Mosley lost his footing and allowed Benny Logan to cut through for the block. When Bradley Fletcher scoops up to run it back, announcer Kevin Burkhardt reluctantly fulfills his role as official party pooper.
It's blocked. It's dead ball. It's not a field goal. Extra point.
But Burkhardt seems to be the only one in the building who knows the play is dead. The crowd thinks he's going to score. Fletcher thinks he's going to score. His teammates think he's going to score. This guy thinks he's going to score. And Fletcher runs it in for what sure looks like a score. It finally falls upon the official to explain that this is not a score. We know we're really in for it when an official has to flip all the way back to Genesis 1:1 and use the phrase, in the NFL.
A blocked try in the NFL cannot be returned.
Why not? If this were a field goal attempt, the Eagles could have returned it for a score. Why would it be any different with an extra point try? But it is. If the opposing team possesses the ball, the play is automatically over, no points for anybody. It's so counterintuitive and nonsensical that not even the players on the field can fathom such a rule. Over the years, this scenario has repeated itself over and over, just not quite often enough for people to remember that the dead ball rule exists. It applied to 2-point conversions as well. Defenders who intercepted a pass were expected to simply drop the ball and move on with their lives. Perhaps motivated by that return in the snow that was whistled dead, the Eagles soon propose a rule change allowing for defensive scores on conversion attempts. It passes overwhelmingly, which makes you wonder why the NFL spent more than 20 years playing under a rule that pretty much everybody understood to be arbitrary and stupid. Pretty handy illustration of how the NFL works and does not. At any rate, welcome to our defensive 2-point conversion unboxing video. This fella doles out 6 points to the offense for scoring a touchdown in the first place, and then 2 points to any defense that manages to force a turnover and take the ball all the way back to the house. Certainly intriguing, since any type of score that issues exactly 2 points to anybody is intriguing. Returning to Figure 1, we can see that the defensive 2-pointer is extraordinarily rare, accounting for a completely trivial percentage of all scoring events. Entering 2025, it's been in place for 10 seasons and has only been seen 14 times, meaning most teams have never even scored one. But during the 2024 postseason, it helps to produce a transformational Scorigami. January 11th, 2025, in the wild card round of the playoffs, the Texans host the Chargers in Houston. It's here where we see Scorigami number 1091. It is, as of the time of this narration, the very most recent Scorigami. Early in the fourth, down 23-6, Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert starts to turn around what has been a pretty terrible day for him so far, completing an 86-yard touchdown pass to Ladd McConkey. The Chargers then opt to try the extra point to cut the deficit to 10. It's blocked, and the ball pops high into the air. Kicker Cameron Dicker parks himself under it. If he can snag it and then just hit the deck, he can cut his losses and kill the play. But remember A.J. Jones forgetting to return the kickoff back in '84? Remember Bradley Fletcher running the block extra point back in 2013 because he thought he could score? Football players understandably sometimes fail to remember football rules because there's a lot of them. Evidently, Dicker thinks he can do what quarterbacks do when a pass is tipped and just bat it down. Legally, this does not stop the play, so when he takes one for the team and gets absolutely nailed, he does so for no reason at all. It remains a live ball, and D'Angelo Ross runs it back for one of the only defensive two-point conversions ever. It pulls the score to a very rare, albeit precedented, 25-12. We're only a Texans touchdown and extra point away from Scorigami, and in the game's final minutes, we get it, 32-12. This score sits very close to our beloved Tetris cannon, which is, it was here. I think we've gotten lost somehow. No, we're not lost. It should be here. It's supposed to be right here. Uh-oh. Let's rewind the tape. Okay, here it was in 2007. We will advance year by year. Still there, still there, still there. At the end of 2023, still there. 2024, it's just gone. Let's see what happened here. September 9th, 2024, Niners beat the Jets 32-19, and the cannon lost one of the tracer bullets down here. And then on December 8th, the Dolphins beat the Jets 32-26. So because of the Jets giving up 32 points twice in a season, it lost a couple of its bullets. It seems like this thing would have remained somewhat intact anyway, but that Texans-Chargers game, that 32-12 game made possible by the defensive two-point conversion, that was the nose of the Tetris. It's just a sad little dash now. It's gone. It survived perfectly intact for 15 years. For much of that time, nobody even knew it was there. And then, in the space of one season, the structure collapsed. Approximately 10,000 years ago, as the most recent ice age ended and glaciers retreated, water froze and then thawed in such a way as to sculpt the Old Man of the Mountain, a 40-foot-tall formation in New Hampshire that resembled an old man's profile. There's no telling exactly how many lonely years the big guy spent out there, gazing over the White Mountains before indigenous peoples first took notice of it. It began to attract wider attention after a team of surveyors recorded its existence in 1805. Here it is photographed in 1865. New Hampshire made it its state emblem, but it remained little more than a regional curiosity until 2000, when its image was minted on New Hampshire's state quarter. After spending many millennia completely unnoticed by anyone, the Old Man of the Mountain was suddenly known by millions. One morning 3 years later, some state park rangers clocked into work and looked upward like they did every morning. It was gone. There was no particular event that caused it. Sometime around midnight, it had simply collapsed under its own weight and ceased to exist. And that was that. It survived just long enough to be noticed and celebrated, and not much longer than that. Things last for a time, then they don't. For how much longer will any of this last? In our final chapter, we will explore the future.